Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is DAREN DOCHTERMAN.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the Inglorious Treksperts.
Go behind the scenes of all your favorite Star Trek series, from the original series to today, with the stars, writers, producers, and more, every Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
And for more, subscribe at trekspertsplus.com.
It's the logical thing to do.
Keep on trekking. Ingloriously, of course. Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
This is DAREN DOCHTERMAN, and we are the Inglorious Treksperts.
I thought it was a classic femme fatale. So much fun.
Like that Shakespearean lace in your acting.
I said, Gene, what do you want from this character?
I want you to just take the character and make it your own.
I had a good time on the film.
On day one, the movie was already $15 million over budget.
We started this movie without an ending. That's like painting yourself into a corner.
I don't think we've ever had a Star Trek captain on our show.
Being, as you said, number one on the call sheet, it is a producer's position if you're going to take it seriously. I was so glad they didn't cast me as Lorca.
You famously wrote that script in 12 days.
On one level, I wrote the script, and on another level, the story was written by everybody and his brother.
Well, I was going to say, what was your response when you were directing and Terry, sort of called you aside and said, hey, I want you to get back in front of the camera again?
I said, he sort of chummed the water a little bit. Are you ready to play Riker? What I thought he was saying was, you better go to the gym and lose some weight. Lines. Are you going to trim your beard? Don't cut your hair. My interest was totally piqued. It's not hyperbole to say it's the best Riker material I've ever had.
New episodes available every Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts. Or subscribe today at TrekspertsPlus.com.
But keep on trekking. Ingloriously, of course.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is DAREN DOCHTERMAN.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the Inglorious
Treksperts.
Something like that.
Well, I got exciting news for people out there in Listenerland. Guess what? This week, the Doctor is in.
Same.
Yes, no, that's Jeffrey Combs.
You got any doctor in you? Would you like some?
We have Rob Picardo, who played the Doctor in Star Trek Voyager, and of course briefly in First Contact, and apparently will be returning to the role for Starfleet Academy, which debuts on Paramount Plus next year. It was delightful to have the chance to sit down and talk with him. Before we do that, of course, as is our wont on this show, the new seventh season, second episode, we can catch up on other business.
And then he reached forward and opened the seventh season.
I love that. I love that season premiere. The sevens we did.
It was fun.
I thought
one of seven.
Fun. Yeah, I thought it was good. And I'll tell you what else was good. So for those of you who need a Isaac Altman Star Trek marathon report, I just want to let you know that before joining you for this podcast, I was watching Once More Into the Breach, and I just want to say, as good as I remember that episode being, it's better. And it made me think how incredible it is when you think about it that, Kor and Kang and Koloth, to have brought them back in Blood Oath like 30 years after they were on a show from the 1960s. And then to have, Kor come back twice more and his performance into Once More Into the Breach.
It's amazing.
is amazing because the thing about Colicos, whatever you want to call him,
Coleco.
To all his, he was always big and over the top, like Baltar. You've not seen the last of Baltar, right?
It was theatrical.
He was very okay. Let's say he was theatrical. I mean, the same thing. Even if you saw the remake of Postman Always Rings Twice, which I only saw that because everybody was seeing it because they said, "Oh, there's hot sex scenes between Jack Nicholson and Jessica Lange." I'm like, I want to see John Colicos. I want to see the guy from Battlestar Galactica is in this. I'm very excited about.
You
and
want to see Colicos
from
vision.
Star Trek. Yeah, it was Colicos. I said I got to see if it's John Colicos is in it. And of course, he. How can you compete with Jack Nicholson? Because Jack Nicholson was in the John Garfield role, and Jessica Lange is in the Lana Turner role, and John Colicos is in the role I don't know who, but he's competing for the Lana Turner character.
It's
for
you
Jessica
who's
Lange.
competing.
Yeah, and it's like John Colicos didn't stand a chance, but compared to Jack, but anyway, the point I'm making is he's so good. He's so good at Once More Into the Breach. Oh my! And he's so subtle in that. It's such a small performance, which is what's so interesting because he's always so big, and in this he just reins it in.
You're damn right. I'm on that wall. Are you going to be there? Are you, Baltar?
That scene where he goes to Worf and asks him to help him, get on a ship again and to die with dignity. It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah, he's completely awesome. Yeah, and Darren hates everything. Give it to Mikey. He'll eat it.
Yeah, I wanted to cancel the podcast because you know what the next episode is. Siege of AR, whatever, 248 or 1701 or Siege of whatever, Siege of IO.
Siege of kicking your ass and making you cry.
I said, do not watch this episode without whatever you do not watch this episode without me. It's been many years since I watched it. Yeah, he will.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I said, go ahead and watch Voyager. It's fine. Go ahead and watch the Voyager. I have to
go on.
I have to say, in all seriousness, when he embarked on this whole marathon and when he got to the whole Voyager Deep Space Nine thing, I really wanted to like Voyager more. Like I thought, okay, all this time has passed and I keep hearing from people how great Voyager is, and I'm really going to give it a chance. I'm going to really have an open mind, and maybe, I missed something. Maybe I wasn't in the frame of mind to appreciate it. It'd be nice because I haven't seen every episode of Voyager, so it'd be like seeing new Star Trek.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
it's like watching new Star Trek.
I don't know. It's not that bad. but I just don't. I still don't like it. And I feel bad because I want to like it. But I'm just not. I just feel, we said this 100 times in the podcast. It's a copy of a copy. It's just warmed over next gen. All the plots are sort of stuff we've seen done better. We just watched one with the, sort of this friendly Borg that was just basically Borg done again. And
hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody. So, and I just, and even the episodes that people say, oh, these are the great ones. I mean, yeah, there are a couple really, and we had them on our list. We had them on our, like, Living Witness, and, there are a couple of special episodes, Bride of Chaotica, but they're few and far between. And that said, look, I get why people of a certain generation love it, and obviously why, it's so meaningful to women who finally saw a character that reflected their experience with Janeway. But, oh, man, it's just like the only time I really love Janeway is like when she's like, there's not a mirror universe, but when like they're like in Living Witness where she's playing like this badass, but it's not really her. Or like in not in but in Living Witness where it's supposed it's this Rashomon and they totally think the Voyager is evil and she's just playing this awful, human being who's captain the Voyager. And then even in what was the two-parter, the Nazi two-parter? Like I love it when
Mrs.
she's
Columbo.
not Janeway. Yeah, Mrs. Columbo. in the Killing Game, in the Killing Game, which we had on our list of underrated episodes, and it's still underrated. I like the Killing Game, but it's basically because it's a World War II story. Oh my God, yeah, that was the big twist in the Killing Game too.
Oh no, that was a different game.
You won't believe the twist. It's a cookbook. No. Oh my gosh. So have you guys been watching any Star Trek lately?
Yeah, that's Star Trek
I turn on Pluto.
Yeah.
And I've actually been watching some Next Gen episodes again.
Yeah.
And
Which
that's
season?
usually what they have on. I don't remember what season.
They have 4 channels. There are 4 channels.
Too long a season.
They got the Voyager. They got the Voyager channel, the Deep Space Nine channel. They got now the Star Trek movie channel, which unfortunately they ruined by putting on
they
the
have
JJ
all the
movies.
new ones. Yeah,
it's like don't need it. Don't.
And
need
then
the
they
JJ
have the
movies.
director's edition right next to it, which irks me to no end.
What do you mean they have it right? What do you mean by that?
Meaning they play Star Trek Beyond and then Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Because then it resets to the beginning again.
Yeah.
And it's the director's edition.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Oh my. I just it's funny because you can watch like Star Trek the Motion Picture through Nemesis and it feels like of a piece. Some are good, some are bad. But it's just like then you watch then they have the 2009 trilogy and it's just like it doesn't belong.
It doesn't connect. There's no
it doesn't connect. Yeah. I mean, it's this whole thing about here we are watching these on Pluto with commercials. Meanwhile, I mean, I can't speak for you, Ashley, but I own all of them. I own them on digital. I own them on physical media. I own them on DVD. I own them on Laserdisc. I own them on 4K. And yet I still watch it on Pluto.
But there is something about watching it that way.
Watching it live and you are not in control of what you're watching.
Oh, no, I am. I'm the control voice in the Outer Limits.
No,
we control the vertical. We control the horizontal.
Yeah. These are references that most of our audience do not know.
Right? I feel like Core.
So
I've outgrown. They did. I'm the Dahar master, and I'm just old, and I still have stories to tell, but apparently nobody wants to hear them.
Would that constitute a joke?
No. I got a secret for you. I'm not that old.
Yes, you are.
Old. Not really.
We all.
I'm young at heart. I was gonna say like James Darren in Deep Space Nine, but that probably don't want to say that.
Yeah. No.
Although it's funny because it said on Pluto. I had Pluto on the other day, and I'm boop 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 boing, and it says, "Oh, in the pale moonlight." I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna sit down and watch this." It was the end credits. And His Way came on, which was fine, which I like His Way. Obviously, introduced James Darren. It's a nice episode, but I really wanted to watch Pale Moonlight again.
Well.
I could just go
on Pluto, it says if you press the rewind button, it'll start it from the beginning again. So,
is that right?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
You got a bone up on how to use Pluto, man.
Yeah, man.
I thought it was just like streaming.
You got to get your phone figured out.
They have on demand as well, and usually every episode that they're running, you can watch from the beginning again.
Oh,
that's how I do it. That's how America does it.
Okay,
that's how my father did it.
That's good to know. Hey, I want to, before we share this great interview we did with Rob PICARDO, I want to remind people that this is now the 7th season. We've changed some of the things over at Trekspert Plus.
Yes.
So we're offering our episodes a week early for Trekspert Plus subscribers. These are the commercial-free versions of our episodes, and then a week later it will drop on all the podcast platforms with commercials. So if you want the commercial-free episodes of Inglorious Treksperts early, the only way to do that is to subscribe to Trekspert Plus and listen to it on Spotify. But if you want, you want to wait, you're patient. Your patience will be rewarded. But of course, you'll also get Deck 78 early. And we are not making all the Deck 78s available to everyone. Those will be select episodes will be available a month after they premiere.
Only the boring ones. No,
but not
that's not true.
There are no
Carefully
boring episodes.
There are no boring ones. They're
to
all
excite you
wonderful.
and delight you.
And I want to remind you that coming up October 3rd, we're going to have the first of our many upcoming Trekspert screening rooms. So you'll want to join us in the Trekspert screening room on Discord for our first Trekspert screening room. We hope we'll see you all there.
And on Halloween, we'll be having the Treksperts screaming room.
Are we?
That could be
I don't know. Cat Spa.
Cat Spa 24 hours a day.
I was going to say, is it Cat Spa or Discovery? I think it's
Night terrors.
I think it's rude to make Discovery jokes at this point.
It is.
Show's
It's
over. It's it's like it's
It's
done.
kicking
I
it when
think
it's gone.
Sylvia
We're done.
and Korob should have been walking around on that sand making the Starfleet insignia. I
think so,
that
too.
would have been a good idea.
What?
That's a Discovery joke. First episode of Discovery, they're walking around in the desert making the Starfleet Delta.
Is that right?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
Yes.
Okay.
Must have blocked it out of your
I'll
memory.
take your word for it. It's a long time ago, and
I do not hear your words.
Unlike a lot of these episodes, I never watched it again. So it's the reason
That's
I
a long
remember
time
this
ago. I'm
stuff
sure he's forgotten.
Is because how many times you've watched it.
is because I've watched these episodes.
I've watched them once.
TOS hundreds of times.
Hundreds of
TNG,
thousands.
most episodes of TNG I've watched 50 to 60 times probably. Deep Space Nine, maybe 20 to 30. And, Voyager, maybe I'm lucky if I've seen it once or 5 times, if it's a good one. And then it just goes on.
From there.
The law of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, we're about celebrating the love. So I'm just being honest. I'm just saying, again, this is my perception. This is the way, my experience these shows. Is, your experience, it might be different.
But probably
Good
not.
for you.
If you're listening to it.
How lucky you are. How wonderful for you.
Yeah,
Well,
but I'll tell you something we're all going to agree on. What are you going to say, Darren?
I was going to say, I'm looking forward to hearing more about Johnny Cab.
Yeah, well, it's so funny you say that, because I was just going to say, this is something we can all agree on. We had a really great conversation at GalaxyCon San Jose with Robert Picardo. The great thing about Robert is, of course,
he's ubiquitous.
For much of his career, he worked with the legendary Joe Dante on a succession of classic films. And so we really took the time early in that interview to talk to him about his work with Joe Dante on movies like The Howling and Gremlins. And we talked also about working with the legendary Ridley Scott on Legend.
And Rob Bottin, who worked on all these.
Mr. Bottin. And so it's a really, really great conversation. Then we make our way to Voyager and have some really interesting insights that he shares with us about Voyager. Great thing about Robert Picardo is he has this really great memory. So he's able to recall just really interesting stories. And it was a really wonderful conversation. And I was very gratified because we hadn't really sat down with Robert before.
In fact, you could almost say that he has total recall.
Yes.
And I think he was as pleased as we were with the way the interview went, because I'd worked with him in the past on a TV show and had a great experience with him. So I went over to thank him and talked to him, and he was very grateful to the three of us for what a good experience it was, which was really nice.
That's
and of course, San
Jose,
San Jose. It was the inaugural GalaxyCon San Jose, and it was remarkable. You've heard our other episodes. We talked about the live commentary with William Shatner on Star Trek V, Bobby Clark, a bunch of the other, reuniting Ralph Sinesky and Bill Shatner. And a lot of this stuff is stuff we'll be sharing in future episodes. But today we're delighted to bring you the great Robert Picardo, who will be joining us after these brief commercial messages, unless you're listening on Trekspert Plus, in which case there will be no commercial messages and no Lieutenant Yar. And we'll be back afterwards with a few closing thoughts, so stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Chris, and this is Anna with MCI. She recently started a great friends and family calling circle.
A group of friends that wanted to get back in touch.
I believe I actually said we should resume communicating.
So Anna called and I signed up.
And Chris called me. I thought if anybody belongs in friends and family, it's us.
I used to get tired of staring at those faces. Now I kind of miss them.
I joined to save the 20% because when I call him, I end up talking to an answering machine, which is more interesting than he is.
I'm usually home. I'm just selective about the calls I take.
When they were forming the circle, they obviously saved the best for last.
Oh, that's why she called me next.
Who is that?
How did you get in here?
There seems to be some error.
I believe you were in the wrong circle.
Call and start saving an extra 20% on calls to your own friends and family circle.
Every week, thousands of people join the millions who already have MCI friends and family. If you'd like to be one of them, give us a ring. After all, shouldn't your least expensive calls be to the people you care about and call all the time?
This is so exciting for us. We've never had the chance to sort of do a Q&A with Bob Picardo, but we're thrilled because we can celebrate at last the 40th anniversary of Oh God, You Devil. So if you're a George Burns fan, this is the panel for you. Without any further ado, the great Robert Picardo.
I want to give you a piece of my mind.
If you guys haven't seen that movie, it's one of the greatest moments in horror of all time.
That line, which is the cult favorite classic line in the movie, I think, is not said on camera. It was added in post-production.
You know, a lot of, for actors, you know, they find mask work very liberating. You get lost in the character. You've done some of that in your career, but obviously, you know, in Legend, you're unrecognizable. I wouldn't say virtually unrecognizable in that role.
I would like to think I am unrecognizable, yes. If you recognize me in the role, then you should leave now. No, it's because of Rob Bottin. He just, liked the fact that I would really move the rubber, as he called it, be very expressive underneath the latex faces, because some actors, after sitting in the makeup chair 4, 5, 6 hours, right when the day begins, right when they have to expend all that energy, they're tired, and they just, once it's on, they don't realize that you have to over-articulate everything to make it look real. And Rob is a genius. I mean, just an amazing guy, and his vision for all these things. He'd show me sculpture, show me what it was going to look like, and all that. But he knew that I would deliver for him, and that's why he kept, you know, putting me in movies that he was doing the makeup design on.
What's so interesting in your career is you really, unlike a lot of actors, avoided being typecast. You've done it all. You've played all kinds of different roles, and of course, in the late '80s, early '90s, you were doing 2 shows at once, which is an actor's dream and an actor's nightmare. It's great for residuals, but it could kill someone. You were doing Wonder Years and China Beach. You know, what was that experience like for you? And you know, when you look back on it now.
Well, China Beach, for those of you who never heard of it, was a Vietnam drama in the late 80s. It premiered right around the same time as The Wonder Years. The Wonder Years was the #1 television show the moment it debuted. Got huge audiences. It was a kid. The adult Daniel Stern's voice was narrating experiences from his childhood, starting at age 12. And so The Wonder Years was a big hit. China Beach, they were both on ABC. The Wonder Years was, I think, Tuesday at 8 o'clock, and China Beach was Wednesday at 10 o'clock. So if you were an astute television watcher, I was playing a bald moron on Tuesday, and I had a full head of hair as a leading man on Wednesday. So it was great. I mean, it was covering all I got to kiss Dana Delaney, which is nice work if you can get it. I mean, and but Coach Cutlip was bald and had an IQ of a porpoise. No, a porpoise is smarter. I mean, he was not a very smart man. He was everyone's memory of their gym teacher, who was, you know, self-important and knew only a few words of English, like all right people, come on people. You know, like every other word was people. So it was a great time. I remember that Entertainment Tonight sent a film crew because in one 24-hour period, I was shooting Gremlins 2, China Beach, and The Wonder Years. I was on all 3 sets. So they did a piece on the busiest actor you've never heard of.
Literally the hardest working man in showbiz. Take that, James Brown. God.
Can we bounce back a little bit to Explorers? Because you have a tour de force performance in that short film at the end of Explorers that seems unattached. But you are whack. I mean, literally and figuratively.
Yes. That was the movie that killed me for heavy makeup roles.
I'll bet.
Because I played 3 characters. One of them was human. I played the star of the movie within the movie that the kids go see at the drive-in, which is called Captain Starkiller. And by the way, we shot Captain Starkiller on a Klingon bird of prey, a Klingon set from Star Trek 2. I'm sorry, what is the Search for Spock?
Three.
Three. I think it was Star Trek 3. That's funny. So if you're ever asked the following trivia question, what Star Trek actor performed on a Star Trek set 15 years before he was cast in Star Trek, you know who to answer.
But it was insane. Your full body covered. And I've always wanted to know how much of that was improvised, how much of it was scripted.
I would say it was all improvised. Joe said to me, because I said, why do you need me inside this suit? And he said, well, you know, this is my impression of Joe Don. He said, you know, we kind of don't have the last act of the movie. You know what I mean? We don't really know. Once the alien opens his mouth, he's supposed to just have playback from famous television shows come out. Like, you know, oh, now, honey, listen, I'll have a scene, you know, from I Love Lucy or whatever. It's supposed to be just famous voices. And Joe said, you know, that's going to get old in about 3 minutes. So we think you just kind of have to make up stuff that sounds like it's on television. So everything I say in that movie, basically, is made up. The TV commercials that I remember as a kid. So poor, the licensing, the legal department at Paramount, every time I opened my mouth during the day, they were on the phone all day the next day trying to clear whatever the hell I said. Literally, I just said anything that came into my head. I did an American Express commercial, and then they had to call American Express and say, you know, are we allowed? So I made a lot of, and then the poor prop department, I said, can I just like play an alien saxophone? Okay. We'll make you an alien saxophone by tomorrow. You know, so anything I did, poor Ethan Hawke had never been in a movie before. Right. And I thought this kid will probably never want to act again because he never knew what I was going to say. It really was totally unfair to a 14-year-old actor in his first movie. I mean, in the movie, you see all these clips from The Day the Earth Stood Still and all this, where humans attack, aliens that come to Earth. They try to kill them. And that's why my character doesn't want to visit Earth, right? I'm trying to explain to him why I'm scared of going, and because I look different than Earth creatures. And literally during one take, the camera rolled, and I said for the first time and only time, I said, I know I look weird to you, but how do you think you look to me? I mean, I watched 4 whole episodes of Lassie before I figured out why the little hairy kid never spoke. I mean, he could roll over and play dead great, but I didn't think he deserved a series. Do you? And he would look at me like this. What do I, First of all, Lassie had been off the air for 20 years. He probably didn't even know what it was, right? But he just would, and Joe, I remember after that take, Joe said, how do you think of this stuff? And I said, Joe, I'm sitting in a makeup chair for 9 hours. I have a lot of time to think.
Well, it's an amazing performance. If you haven't seen it, go out and find Explorers. It's amazing.
Well, it's so interesting, too, because so many of these films at the time were not particularly financially successful. Explorers, Matinee, Inner Space more so, but and Gremlins too, and yet now they're beloved, cult classics. Does that surprise
Inner Space
you?
was actually kind of a failure in its initial release and became a huge hit in its afterlife, and sold a lot. I'm sorry, did I upset that young man? I'm sorry. Yeah, he was an investor in Inner Space. Inner Space, everybody thought it was going to be a hit. It tested through the roof. And the theory was that Spaceballs, the Mel Brooks movie, which also became a classic in its afterlife, but got pretty savaged by the critics, if you remember, opened the weekend before Inner Space. So you have Spaceballs, and a week later you had Inner Space. So everybody was thinking, I don't want to. I hear that movie Inner Spaceballs is really bad. Right. I mean, I literally think we were conflated because we were two sci-fi comedies, although Inner Space is really more of a romantic comedy.
Absolutely.
Even though the palette is science fiction, It's really a sweet romantic comedy.
It's the
a great-
romance between Meg Ryan and the cowboy.
And the cowboy, yes. Can I tell a story from Inner Space? In the movie, this is all before motion control photography. So there's a scene in the movie where I'm literally playing both Martin Short, pretending to be my character, the cowboy, and the cowboy. I have to be both parts in the same shot. So what happens is, I come out of the bathroom as Martin Short with the cowboy's face. I come out of the bathroom, and Meg Ryan's character can't figure out what happened, and I start to explain to her what I think has happened. So the camera comes around. First you see my face. I walk past the camera, and then I'm talking to her, and I pace while I'm talking, out of frame for a fraction of a second. And Martin Short paced back in instead of me. Right, wearing lifts because I'm taller than him, so they evened our height out. And then he's talking on his back, but the audience kept thinking it was me. I ran behind the camera, tore my clothes off down to my bikini briefs, ran into the bathtub, tore the yellow wig off, the blonde wig. Meanwhile, the hairdresser is behind the bathtub wall, and there's a soap dish that the soap dish is pulled out, and her arm comes through the tile wall of the bathtub, puts the cowboy's wig on me, and then pulls the soap dish back in to cover it up. That all happened, all of that. The explanation, pacing out of frame, tearing my clothes off, taking one wig off, putting the other wig on, jumping in the bathtub, and then trying my hardest to not breathe like this. As the camera came up on the cowboy asleep, we did that 17 times. I almost threw up. It was so fast. But the point is, I had to have a suit that could be torn off with Velcro, a breakaway suit, they call it. So here's the joke. The day that I met Meg Ryan for the first time, who's 26 years old and adorable, right? And Joe says, Bob, have you met Meg? And as I was shaking her hand, the assistant wardrobe person said, Joe, by the way, we finished the breakaway suit. She tore my clothes off me. So I'm shaking Meg Ryan's hand, and suddenly I'm in a little teeny tiny thong with a snakeskin crotch. So I went like this and ran away. It was very funny.
Did she call you after?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No. Hey, I once was in a magazine. I was in some article like 30 years ago about men, 10 best movies with men in their underwear. I made the cut. It was amazing.
Well, you've done a lot of fantasy and a lot of genre. When you did China Beach, did you spend a lot of time, sort of talking to Vietnam vets and people who, were veterans of the, to prepare for that role?
Our co-creator of China Beach, William Broyles, was a Vietnam veteran, wrote a very famous book about Vietnam. Then he became a journalist and created the Texas Monthly. Then he decided he wanted to learn how to write for the screen. So China Beach, he collaborated with an experienced showrunner and writer named John Sacred Young, and they worked together. Bill Broyles went on to win the Academy Award for Apollo 13. He wrote that script. And he also wrote Castaway with Tom Hanks. So he learned how to write very well. And Bill would arrange for various veterans to come, and we had what we called, Veterans Day, where we would bring a bunch of people who served in Vietnam, all different. Some of them were Army nurses, a doctor who had been drafted, who was sort of had experiences like my character, and they would sit and tell us stories, and many of the stories were dramatized in the show, with their permission, of course. So there was, I assume it was with their permission. They were, who the heck knows now? But anyway, we had seminars. We felt a real sense of responsibility to make, because that war had been so divisive, and there were so many wounds. It's really the first war where, when the soldiers came back, instead of getting the thanks of a grateful nation that they deserved, because the war was so controversial and unpopular, we made the tremendous mistake, the public, of sort of blaming those who served for the unpopular policy rather than our government, who had us there in the first place. So there were a lot of wounds that never quite healed from that war and still haven't. But I think that Bill Broyles, being a vet himself, felt a real responsibility that he wanted the stories to be true and honest and hopefully to make a little tiny effort at healing some of those wounds. So we all took it really seriously, and it was really the best dramatic experience as an actor I've ever had in television.
I mean, it's interesting because, of course, MASH famously was dealing with Vietnam through the lens of the Korean War because they couldn't really make it about Vietnam. And then you have this string of Vietnam movies in the late 70s, early 80s. But that was the first TV show to really deal with the Vietnam War, and it was, what people may not who are younger, it was very, very successful, and it went a number of seasons.
We ran, I guess, 3 seasons, maybe even a half, 3.5 seasons, a partial. And Tour of Duty was also on, but Tour of Duty was more like a Vietnam version of combat. It really focused on the soldiers, whereas China Beach's theme was that the war was really it was really the effect of the war on the people serving. So the soldiers were coming to, we were like an emergency in-country evacuation hospital for soldiers that were injured, plus a little R&R base if the soldiers got 2 days off. So basically the war was an off-camera character, and these were the people who were serving, who were exhausted, worn out, and propping each other up. Some of them were, we had a donut dolly, we had a volunteer who was just there to keep morale up. The principal character was an Army nurse. I was a guy who was married and had been drafted to serve, and really was my character was really kind of an asshole in the pilot. His name was Dick Richard, which means his name was Dick. He was twice the Dick. He was an old school doctor who thought he was the hands of God, sort of, but then he got to change. I really played, my whole career I played characters that make a bad first impression. You don't like them at first, and then slowly you sort of see why they are the way they are. Whether it's Coach Cutlip, the moron on The Wonder Years, even though he's really like Richard Nixon with an IQ of 72, you start to see why he acts the way he does, the source of his, that he's the kind of guy who thought he was going to teach English, but instead he got stuck with gym and remedial reading. He thinks he's not being respected. That's the core. It's the same, really, the story of my character in Star Trek, the Doctor, brilliantly programmed for this new technological device, an artificial intelligence in medicine programmed with everything humanity knows about medicine in the 24th century, and yet anyone can turn him on and off like a light switch, and that pisses him off. So he has a bad attitude. So all of these characters, if I had to pick one thing, as I said, they make a bad impression first, but then the audience starts to see what makes them act the way they do and kind of root for them to not be as much of an asshole as they are.
The werewolf made a pretty good impression.
Yeah, the werewolf is a kind of an exception. I don't think he's redeemable. I don't think Eddie Quist has any redeemable qualities. So yeah, it's not every role, but he did. You're right. He made a bad first impression. He just never made a good one.
Well, I want to ask you, because you were such a chameleon through all your roles, and having done all that prosthetic and mask work, it's not surprising that when you auditioned for Voyager, you auditioned for Neelix.
Yes, I never learned my lesson. When I was working on a play at a theater I always wanted to work at in LA, a very prestigious theater called the Mark Taper Forum in downtown Los Angeles. I'd always wanted to work there. I was playing a leading role that happened to be a doctor with a terrible bedside manner. And the script for Voyager came along, and I said to my agent, I can't audition. I have rehearsals, 12-hour rehearsals. He said, don't you get a lunch break? I said, yeah, but I can't take a job. He said, just go. I said, but I have a job. He said, well, lie. like any good agent. So I went, and I didn't tell them. But when I looked at the script, I literally didn't have time to read the whole Voyager pilot script because it was 2 hours long, and I just read this thing. It said, "The Doctor, a computer program of a doctor, colorless, humorless." Does that sound like a bucket of fun to you? So I'm telling an actress friend of mine who worked on China Beach on the phone, I said, yeah, my agent wants me to audition. Oh, she said, if the script is great, I'm going to audition for Janeway. I said, but they want me to audition for this doctor character. She said, well, there's a funny alien character named Neelix. Look at that. Now, I'm thinking little Spock ears, right? I'm not thinking that he's going to be buried alive in makeup. So I literally turned down the audition for the doctor, went in and asked to read for Neelix, and I read so well that they wanted to test me. So I came this close to spending 7,000 hours in the makeup chair and getting a part that really, I love Ethan Phillips. He and I are very good friends, and I didn't know he was my competition. But I came so close to getting it. The story I later heard was that the studio wanted him, and the producers of the show were favoring me. But the studio got their way. They wanted someone of smaller stature, and Ethan got the part. And I went, and I thought, okay, it's just as well, because the makeup would probably be terrible or whatever. And they called back, and this never happens in television, ever. Once you've had a network test and you don't get the job, you're like a used piece of, Kleenex. They move on. But they came back and said to my agent, we really would love to see him read for the part we were originally interested in him for. I think they said there's something about his voice that so we'd like to see him. And I said to my agent, I don't get the joke, but I'll try. And I went in, and I according to my children, who were very young at the time, but in later years, they said, Dad, the key to your success in Voyager is your resting bitch face. So at the audition, now remember, I don't know much about Star Trek. I knew they wanted me to make them laugh. And they had seen 900 actors, that's what I heard. Everyone from Howard Hesseman to, they had seen all these actors, and I kept saying to my agent, there's nothing funny here. There's no jokes. I don't know how to make this funny. So the casting director, the poor woman, Pam Dutton, who had taken over for Junie Lowry, who cast all the other Star Trek shows, but she had just had twin babies. So this other casting director comes in, and she looks just exhausted. And her line to me is, I'm supposed to scan her, and I say, your injuries are not serious. You can return to your station. So in the network audition, with everyone watching me, all the heads of the studio, 14 people, I said, your injuries are not serious. You can return to casting. And she went like this, and then just burst out laughing, and then the whole room laughed. It was a ridiculous thing to do. But then at the very end, the last scripted line I had, the doctor has been left activated in sickbay. And the last line in the scene was, I believe someone has failed to terminate my program. And at the end of my audition, I took a long deadpan look at everyone watching me, and I said, I'm a doctor, not a nightlight. And they hired me that day.
So clearly it must have come as a surprise that this role was so elastic and that you got to do so many different things, because it feels like on paper in that Bible, it's a one note, and what you did with it was you were able to pretty much do anything.
Well, the writers are very smart, and they knew that my character was going to develop. I didn't know. I didn't know that. I kept thinking, well, we've got a Vulcan character. He'll be the Spock. He'll be the outsider character. I didn't think, well, he's full Vulcan, so he can't be at war with himself the way Spock was. I just didn't know enough about Star Trek to realize that they were going to develop my character that way. That because he was a step beyond what Data had been. Data famously had no emotion, right? And Data was a very sort of childlike, inquisitive artificial intelligence, being an android. I was supposed to be a step beyond that, because Star Trek loves to do the same thing over again, but differently. And I was supposed to be the cranky, curmudgeonly artificial intelligence. And I really think it came, in retrospect, this is the 90s. Everybody now has a home computer, and everyone is constantly having problems, glitches with their computer. You remember, you have a software problem. No, you have a hardware problem, right? Well, Data was hardware, I was software, and I was your new problem. Because the idea that an artificial intelligence could be willful, could not cooperate, could have a bad attitude, you know, these were all new things that it's like, why is my computer not doing what I'm telling it to do? And I think that was sort of in the ether. You know, that was, and also we had just come out of the big healthcare debate of the second Clinton presidencies. So I really think that my character, the doctor, was also a satire of managed healthcare, right? It was if the government gets involved, you know, you only have only 10 seconds per patient. His initial affect didn't work. His interface, I was more interested in my feelings than yours as my patient. So I think there was a certain amount of fun they were having with the idea of a kind of a government-controlled, sort of mechanical, futuristic healthcare. That's only my own theory. I don't know if it's true or not.
And then you also got the fun of playing the character that the program is based on for Deep Space Nine as well, which I imagine must have been a lot of fun.
Yes, because the idea was that if you thought the doctor was an asshole when he was first, wait till you meet his programmer. So that was fun. And then, of course, the doctor had this very Johnny-on-the-spot kind of extended posture, and we decided to make his programmer kind of a slouch and a slug. So whenever I played a scene with myself as both characters, I was shorter as my programmer. So if you look at those, my eyes don't line up quite as much when I'm looking at myself, because I forgot to account for the fact that the other guy was slouching and was about 1.5 inches shorter. It's just one of those technical things that I noticed that maybe you wouldn't, but it was fun. Yes, it was a lot of fun to do that. These were the early motion control photography days where you could literally walk around. You do both performances and you have to act with yourself, but you have to remember where you were and what you did and how fast you said the lines, because it's very technical. It was very technical and complicated, but challenging and fun to do the scenes, the episodes where I interacted with myself as the other character.
One of Rick Berman's lasting legacies to Star Trek is giving so many of the actors a chance to direct. I mean, not every producer, in fact, they run from that. You know, then no, I don't want to give that. But you joined a sort of distinguished list of people, starting with Jonathan and through Next Generation, through Voyager, of directing 2 episodes. What was that experience like for you? What was the impetus for you? Did you enjoy the experience?
Well, first of all, you're right about Rick, that he did that. He changed the lives of so many of my colleagues. Jonathan Frakes is literally one of the most beloved directors working today, because he's a lovable guy. He's an actor's director because he's himself an actor, but he has about the best people skills of anyone. And so he has had tremendous success as a director, and many others. Obviously, LeVar has directed very successfully. And in our show, Roxanne Dawson has become hugely successful, as has Robert Duncan McNeil. And Tim Russ still acts a lot, but also has directed a number of times. I enjoyed doing it. I'm glad I took the challenge. I had no desire to pursue it, none. Because maybe if I'd started 10 years younger, you know, if China Beach had run longer, I was shadowing the director on that. If I had started there, I might feel differently because I would have been younger. By the time I got to direct, I thought, you know, some people love 200 people coming up to you every minute and asking a question. I don't. I love being responsible for myself, and I just realized that I set out in life. I mean, it would have been, I'm sure, very lucrative to become a director and all that, and you have more of a sense of power, certainly, than you do as an actor, but it just wasn't for me. I thought, you know, I think this is a heart attack on a plate. I'm going to just stay an actor. I've never regretted that, but I thank Rick Berman for giving me the chance, and as I said, so many of my colleagues, that's become their new life and their new career, and I think it's a great credit to him that he did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you probably have a lot of questions, so we want to have time for questions. So if you line up at the mic, go ahead.
We see.
Thank you.
You're on.
Thank you so much. The Doctor, that's one of my favorite nicknames, and I love your acting performances on Star Trek. Like Ruben Amaro Jr. of the Philadelphia Phillies and Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons, you attended Penn Charter High School in Philadelphia. While growing up in the city of brotherly love, who were some of the people that inspired you or influenced you in your upcoming acting and musical careers?
Oh, that's a sweet question. Thank you. Probably some of my teachers. I went to a wonderful Quaker school called the William Penn Charter School. And for those of you who ever watched The Goldbergs, ever see The Goldbergs? That's the school. It was based on my school, because the guy who created The Goldbergs went to my school. And he was about, I don't know, 15 years younger than me. He remembers when he must have been younger, 20 years younger than me. In any case, when I was on Voyager, I would go back to my high school and talk to the students who were interested in acting, and Adam Goldberg was one of those students. So later on, when he spun off the show Schooled from the Goldbergs, he did the episode where Robert Picardo, who went to our school, is coming back to talk to the. So I played myself coming back to talk to the students. It was a really sweet idea, and the funniest thing about it was they had a very funny gym character who played the gym coach on that. And that guy said, yeah, Picardo, he was also on the Wonder Years. I thought his performance was overly broad. Which was hilarious, because his performance was much broader than mine. So there were a lot of in-jokes going there. At Penn Charter, I had some really wonderful teachers, none of them greater in their influence on me than my English teacher with the name Ted Shakespeare, believe it or not. And Ted Shakespeare, he had served in the First World War he was a conscientious objector, so he served as a medic, and he lost his arm, so he had a hook. You know, he was a little scary. He was a very handsome man with a boyish face and steely gray hair slicked back, but he had a hook that when you're really young, it was a little scary, to see him. He was a magnificent teacher. He's the one who kind of pushed me into acting. I did a play in 9th grade, mostly because the other actor was a friend of mine, and he pushed me into it, and then Mr. Shakespeare saw that I had a talent for it, and he kept giving me more challenging roles. So between 9th grade and 12th grade, at first I only wanted to be in comedies or musicals. Senior year, he made me do The Crucible, which is very dramatic. And I really think that he saw something in me and was showing me that this was. So he was, I would say, he was a mentor to me. I remained friends with him. I spoke at his memorial when he passed away at age 92, I think. He was just a lovely, lovely man. And then there were other teachers there, 2 other English teachers I had who I also loved. One of them named Mr. Shug, I think was my teacher in 9th grade. And we used to compete with who could write the funniest lyrics. And I was pretty good limerick writer in 9th grade. And I wrote one about him, but he killed me, guys, with this. I'm gonna recite the limerick he wrote about me in 9th grade. Are you ready? Yeah. Yes. A jabbering jerk named Picardo considers himself quite a bard. Oh. Though his fumbling verse range from feeble to terse, his head remains empty and hard. Oh. You gotta love that, right? God bless you, Mr. Shook. Never forgot that. The man was a genius. So yeah, I had Penn Charter it remains still a wonderful school. The teachers there are extraordinary. I visited the school. I have, and now I am. They're going to name the drama prize there after me, which I think is sweet. Partly because I'm making a nice donation, but also because. But anyway, so yes, so the drama prize will have my name on it, right?
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, thank you.
So I know that in addition to going to that charter school, I know you also went to Yale University as well. And it does beg the question, but what were some of your fond experiences while you were attending Yale University? Because I know that's when you first got into like singing and I think opera, correct?
Yes, Yale, amazing place. I went there, I was declared a biology major. I took some very stupid courses that were really too hard for me. I remember I took Middle High German literature. Middle High German bears the same relation to contemporary German as basically Chaucer's English does to English, maybe even Beowulf's English. I mean, it was so impenetrably hard for me. If I had grown up speaking German and was fluent in German, I might have been able to do it. But I'd only had 4 years of high school German. Anyway, I did stupid things. I took advanced electronics when I didn't understand anything about that. But I majored in biology, and I ended up graduating with high honors. How the hell that happened, I don't know. And I graduated my 3rd year because once I switched from biology to theater, everything got a lot easier. But the experience that sent me out of biology and into acting was I was in a big musical at Yale, Leonard Bernstein's Mass. And it was conducted by a recent graduate of the Yale School of Music who was about in his mid-20s, John Mosseri. He knew Leonard Bernstein because he had been an intern and had conducted the chorus of an opera that Bernstein conducted. I think it was Carmen, and the young John Mosseri had the job of teaching the chorus, the music, and conducting it in rehearsal. Anyway, the Mass was written by Bernstein for the opening of the Kennedy Center in 1970, and John Mosseri said to Mr. Bernstein, I think they kind of screwed up your piece. I think they made it too glitzy. I'd like to do a poor theater production at Yale. And Bernstein said, you can do it. You have my permission to do it. You don't have to pay any rights or whatever. So we did it at Yale in 1970, I don't know, 3 maybe, and Bernstein came to see it and loved it, and loved me in it, and wanted me to sing the lead, which I couldn't do. It was too hard. But I had a very flashy 4-minute song that was sort of the Broadway musical show. Bernstein called me the Great Picardo because he loved my name, because there's a movie called The Great Caruso. He was just joking on it. Anyway, Leonard Bernstein said to me, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I'm studying to be a doctor. And he said, well, I'm surprised to hear that. You have such great natural energy on stage. I think you'd want to be an actor. And I said, Mr. Bernstein, would you say that to my mother? And he did. So that got me out of pre-med, and then I graduated my 3rd year and went to New York. I made a deal with my mother. If I wasn't successful by 25, I would go to my fallback position, which was medical school. But by 23, I had my first lead on Broadway. By 24, I had my second. So I actually peaked at 24, folks. I'm sorry. 24 was the height of my career. It's been like this since. No, like that.
We're going to have to hurry through these questions, so if you can, make them in the form of a yes or no.
Oh yeah, no, I'll shut up now. I will do it really fast.
Okay, I'll be really fast. You said earlier that that your role felt like it was a commentary on the healthcare system. One of the best episodes, in my opinion, of The Doctor is Critical Care, where he's kidnapped. Do you feel like that was a commentary on the healthcare system at the time?
I do. if you recall the episode that depending on your rank in society, whatever your job was, you were accorded health care according to your perceived worth to society. So if you were very wealthy and well off, you got great health care. If you were poor, you got maybe just enough to keep you alive. So yeah, I think it was a commentary on healthcare and whether it should be a right and whether we should all have equal access to it. So I agree with you.
Thank you for being here.
Hi, it's nice to know that there's another biologist who's still a theater kid. I don't know if they ever did it because I actually haven't seen all the Voyager episodes. But the Doctor is an amalgamation of all these great doctors from history. Did they ever do an episode where something terrible happens and you break into all of your components?
We did an episode called The Darkling, where the Doctor is trying to incorporate various personality traits of famous historical figures, but the alchemy of mixing all those traits goes dark, and he creates sort of a Doctor, a Mr. Hyde character, right? Like an evil alternative personality. And the reason we did that was Brannon Braga, our exec producer, I told him I was Eddie Quist in The Howling. And that is a movie that had scared the shit out of him when he was a kid. So when he knew I could do that sort of dark thing, he wrote that episode. He told me this specifically because of he wanted to, to do a Jekyll and Hyde story because of my Eddie Quist experience.
The reason I ask is because I would have always loved to see you playing Dr. McCoy.
Well, I had the honor of spending a couple of appearances on stage with DeForest Kelley. He was absolutely lovely to me. I remember the day that I did my first convention, or my second one, we were on the same bill, and he came on stage and said, "Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a hologram." Which I thought was pretty cute.
Thank you so much for being here today. I just have enjoyed learning so much more about you today. I love you as a doctor in Voyager, the way you evolved and the way you made a point that I'm not just a machine, I'm here. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And I also enjoyed you in Stargate Atlantis as the real Grubby's manager.
Thank you. Do you guys know that I am in the new Star Trek series, Starfleet Academy? That was a carefully guarded secret for a long time, but was announced a couple weeks ago at San Diego Comic-Con. So I'm being taken out of mothballs, folks.
What version of the EMH are you going to be in Starfleet Academy, like the one from Voyager or the one from 700 Years in the Future, or which one?
I can neither confirm nor deny. We're very tight-lipped about, but the producers have said that I will be playing the Doctor. That's what they said, because I called them on the phone in Las Vegas at the convention when the moderator said, "Bob, what can you tell us about Starfleet Academy?" I went, "I don't know. Let me find out." And I called the execs and put them on the phone like this. So yes, I can say only this, that I am playing the Doctor.
Well, Bob, what a delight. It's always so great to see you on screen. It's even more exciting to have you here in person. He'll be here all weekend signing at his booth, so if you have other questions, please visit him on Star Trek Alley.
Soon to compete are some very dazzling science fiction films.
There are a lot of great years for movies, but 1982 is the greatest.
That's the year that I officially fell in love with movies.
I can't think of a year during my life that the lineup was equivalent.
Week after week, you have one classic movie after another that holds up 40 years later.
It was this great moment where nerds accidentally won.
There are 2 Steven Spielberg movies coming out within a week of each other.
They're here.
I remember calling my agents and saying, I don't know how much this is going to do for me, but I think it's going to do a lot for the world.
I'm getting chills even thinking about it. It was one of the most transporting movies I'd ever seen.
You could certainly argue there were better years for cinema,
but there's no greater geek year than 1982.
And we're back. And do you think they cast it because of Picard? His name was PICARDO?
Absolutely. That's
I
why.
think that's the only reason they cast him. Yeah.
Right. Because the second runner-up was this guy named Frakesy, who we've never...
Frakesy.
Now, it's so funny because, I love what he said about the fact that it could have been a very limiting role because, of course, he was confined to sickbay until he got a 29th century mobile emitter in the classic episode Future's End with Ed Begley and Sarah Silverman.
Begley?
Begley.
Begley.
Ed
No,
Begley
Jr.
Ed Begley Snoopy.
Begley. I love
Begley.
Beagles. I had one, but that's not...
Or as he was called by never mind.
Use your words.
Ed Begley, or whatever he's called.
Begley.
Who I've really enjoyed in a lot of. He's not the guy I would cast as a villain. He's not a villain. So it was weird they cast him as this kind of. Well, I guess Elon Musk wasn't on the scene back then, but they cast him as like this tech genius who was, using his technology for evil, to elevate his stock price and to steal all this stuff at the risk of destroying the 29th century. And that's where we make the requisite joke: if only they had destroyed the 29th century, the 31st century would have existed.
Damn.
But
Damn.
Hey, this is about celebrating the love. Why would you say that?
Okay, well then I'll tell you what I loved. I loved talking to Robert Picardo about his experiences with Joe Dante, particularly The Howling, because nobody can give you a piece of his mind like Robert Picardo. That was just a glorious moment finding out the story behind that to me.
We showed that clip, and I think people did not know what to make of it. Because they all know him as the lovable, curmudgeonly doctor, right?
Right.
So I think when we show the clip from The Howling, which most of them probably weren't even born when it came out, they were like, what the hell is this?
Why is he pulling his brain out?
Because
it's awesome. That's
brain. What is brain?
What I was going to say before was that Marlon Brando used to call up Ed Begley
Marlon Brando
on the phone, and he used to say, "Hey, Bagel, this is Bran Flakes." This is true.
This is a true story, really.
This is a true story.
Oh, okay, that's a true story.
That's just how Brando rolled.
What was your favorite Ed Begley role? I loved him as Lieutenant Greenbean in Battlestar Galactica 78. That's a true story, too.
When I first came out to Los Angeles and I lived at USC and would go across the street to the University Village Theater, I saw Transylvania 65000 about 8 times in the theater.
No, you didn't.
I did.
You were the
one. Nothing else to do before classes started. So I saw that movie over and over again. And Ed Begley is hilarious in it, and he's just about the only thing that's hilarious in it.
Transylvania 65000. That was Gina Davis.
And Jeff Goldblum.
And Jeff Goldblum, yeah, that's where they met, because they were married for a while, weren't they?
Yeah. They met on that movie.
You got to do that as a guilty pleasure on the 4:30 movie.
Well, maybe I will.
Yeah.
Maybe I already
did. No, you did not.
Okay.
You did not.
All right.
I came up with a guilty pleasure the other day for our next guilty pleasure, but I don't remember what it was.
Don't say what it is. You don't want to.
I'm not.
You don't want to spoil it like you spoiled my guilty pleasure. Now.
Listen, I don't even know because I didn't write it down, and now I don't remember.
Pleasure.
I wrote it down so I wouldn't have to remember.
I don't remember. Don't remember. But yeah, Picardo was just a lovely, lovely guest, and
he's awesome.
We're so thrilled to have him, and what a great guy. And we weren't really going to get into the whole Starfleet Academy because obviously, we figured at this point they don't really want to talk about it. But he actually was fairly forthcoming in talking about that. So that's certainly a reason to tune in. If there's a reason to tune into that, it'd be Bob Picardo's in it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll watch anything he's in.
Almost
anything.
Well,
well, let's go to his filmography. Would you watch
Let's not go. Let's not go there because we have to wrap things up here on the Trekspert.
Oh, okay.
But I have to say, I'm so glad that we got to do this. A lot of great interviews we'll be sharing from San Jose over the course of the new season, and we're getting very close, gentlemen.
It's that time of year, folks.
It's beginning to feel a lot like
the holiday
special.
time.
Oh man! And if you're a newcomer to the Treksperts, you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
38 parts, 96 hours.
If you're a newcomer, you should be listening to the Alien Nation Spurts.
Yeah. Wow.
12 quatloos on the newcomers.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Ed Begley
guys.
wasn't in that one.
No, he wasn't. So great. He's great in Arrested Development, as Sitwell. Love him in that.
I've never seen
Very
that
funny.
show, so it's okay.
You've never seen Arrested Development?
No.
So great.
Arete Developmente.
So great. One of the great.
I loved him
comedies
in
of all time.
Alf.
In Alf?
I don't know. Maybe.
Was he in Alf?
I don't know. Was he?
Oh, jeez. Okay. Well, listen, we want to thank you, of course, for joining us here on Inglorious Treksperts. New episodes every Thursday. You can hear new episodes commercial free 1 week early when you subscribe to Treksperts Plus at trekspertsplus.com. And of course, we ask that you rate us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts, bring new people to the show. Also, share your thoughts at trekspertsplus@gmail.com via email or on any of your favorite social channels. Inglorious Trek, Inglorious Treksperts. And we'll be back next week with an all-new episode. And every other Tuesday, you can listen to Deck 78 if you're a Treksperts Plus subscriber. And new episodes drop a month later here on the Inglorious Treksperts feed. Lots of Treksperts goodness, so don't miss a week with the Treksperts. That's Ashley Edward Miller, Darren Dochterman, and myself, Mark A. Altman. So a very special thanks to our video producer,
Brian Mix.
Brian Mix.
Well, very special.
Do you
thanks
smell
to-
toast?
A very special thanks. I am the Dahar Master. A very special thanks to our video producer, Brian Mix, and of course, the great Mark Rivera, who makes us sound so good every week. Of course, Peter Holmstrom. Thank you, everyone. And of course, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Inglorious Treksperts. And we'll see you again right back here next Thursday. Until then, keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course.